you can actually log in, and you can handle call routing and unified mailbox and a whole bunch of things. The dialer, actually callback dialer. Druid is actually, Druid does do a lot for the administrator and the person managing it and everything, but we like to focus more on the user because, after all, there are just one or two administrators, and we think a system should help the majority of people using it, which are the users. So we have a user portal and things of that nature. I'll come to that. So, okay, let me show you a demo. So this is the standard Druid login that you'd show up at. So say I log in as an administrator. Okay, here. So I say this was a new Druid box. You just installed it and you decided, you know what, let me configure this. All you do is go to Trunks, Hardware Wizard. So this is running on VMware, so I don't have any cards or anything, but your cards would possibly be listed there, and you just have to click Configure All, and that would take care of that. Then you probably want wipe trunks. So say you decide you want a SIP trunk. You could just go in here and, the trunk name, decide you want an inbound trunk. You say, okay, how do I handle the trunk? So when calls are coming in over the trunk, what do I want to do to those calls? So, well, by default, I would like the call to just go to an extension, say Mark Spencer's extension. He says, oh, yeah, but around lunchtime, I would like the call handled a little differently. Okay, say I have my lunch between 12 and 1. So, and decide I want to send that call to auto attendant or something. There are none listed here, but you could just choose it, and that would configure that. Again, if say you want to configure how outbound calls are now handled on this trunk, you could just go here. You go to Pattern Wizard that help you create those dial patterns that you probably want to match against. So you could just say, number begins with 1, or you could just choose one of the fixed ones. So you say, okay, US, Canada, long distance dialing. Say, okay, create the pattern for you. So, and everything is obviously, tooltips, help support is like integrated at every level. So you can get help as you go. You're probably now wondering, okay, so now we have all the trunks set up, and now I need to go and set up my phones. Well, assuming you knew about plug-and-play support in Druid, you've obviously already gone and plugged them in. So they should just show up. So there are two ways to handle this. So if you go to Manage Stations, all the phones that have auto-detected just show up here. They would show up in the detached state. In Druid, that means that the phone does not have an extension attached to it. It doesn't mean the phone is completely useless. You can actually get directory services and some basic system access to some basic functionality, but you can't call each other and stuff. There's no extension on the phone. So you can always go to Manage Extensions and say add an extension, create that extension, and attach a phone to it. Just choose a phone and attach it. Or you could always go to Add Stations. So this is actually some of the phones that we have auto-provisioning support for. The Astra works pretty good because it uses multicast DNS. The Polycom, Linksys, Mitel, Cisco use CDP. The SNOM, you need to manually set the VLAN ID, but it's still pretty easy. So say we gotta add a Polycom phone, I just click on it. And if you've already plugged that phone into the network somewhere, then it would just show up in the MAC address listing. And all you need to do is choose it and type in the required fields, and you're set up. You're ready to go. Well, we have a lot of functionality here, but I'm not going to go over all of them. Some of it is very standard Asterisk stuff. It's just done in our way. So, for example, we have this. This is how we handle. So we have static agents in our queue and dynamic agents, and then there are no attached phones right now in the system. I just installed it, so Yeah.
Whenever you do a change,
Right.
Do you reload everything, or do you have that database?
Oh.
What is the way of that?
Well, there are two ways we actually handle it. We have a parser for Asterisk config files. So you actually can change the config file, and we won't damage it when we write our changes into it. We'll preserve the state of the config file. But we do use a database for some parts of Druid. So a lot of the call routing and some of the user function, permissions and user settings, a lot of that is in a database. So Druid uses kind of a hybrid model where we do use the Asterisk config files as well as a Postgres database. And sometimes we need to reload and sometimes we don't. And things like reloading asterisks and every time you make a change, everything is handled in the background. We're quite smart about that, so we don't like reload the entire asterisks every time. We reload specific modules. So if you've changed voicemail, you just reload that. So it just makes things faster. You use drag and drop and stuff all over the interface, so it makes life really easy. So if you had agents in here, you could just change their penalty state just by drag and drop. So not really going into all the details, I'll just show you some basic things. We have call records where the admin can kind of see, what are the missed calls. We have system status, and that's pretty standard. This is all because of how great Dojo is. So you can do some good graphics and everything right in there. So we'll log out from here. Oh yeah, let me show you this. Well, just some of the services. You can start and stop Asterisk directly, or there's external services that we require. These are some of the services that Druid runs. Each one's there for a purpose. I mean, we try not to have junk. So CDP, you can see the MDNS. We use router information protocol, RIP, to just to broadcast routing details on how to get packets in and out of our VLAN to the external routers in your network. So the Druid machine, since the Druid machine itself will create the tagged VLAN, it's itself the definitive router, the gateway router for that VLAN. So it actually broadcasts routing information to let the routers know that, okay, send all packets to me. So yeah, there's some other basic stuff which everyone can kind of look at and say, okay, I know what that is.
Where is the main difference between the open source version and the commercial version?
Well, there are a few differences. Obviously, first the difference is support. And secondly, there aren't so many differences on the core functionality per se, but there are differences around a lot of the enterprise features. Like for the closed source version, we are working on really tight Active Directory integration. That's maybe backporting some of the 1.6 functionality to kind of use LDAP backends. And we're working on BlackBerry and external client applications that help people. And I mean, support is usually the best, differentiator, because without that, I mean, you're on your own. So then when you log out from here, okay, now, yeah, sure.
Question, how many users can you go up with such an installation? Have you any plans about clustering or so on?
No, actually, yeah, we do have plans in clustering. This is how we think, this is how we've actually gone about it. Right now, we have actual customers in the US who actually run our setup, and it's gone up to around 300 phones. He was actually an existing Mitel user. He had a large Mitel setup, and he was just tired of paying them for every little thing. So he actually just swapped out the Mitel servers, installed Druid, and all his Mitel phones just rebooted and provisioned into Druid. He thought it was pretty cool, and since then he's been a big fan of our stuff. But Druid is tailored to organizations of a certain size right now. And we are working on things like I mentioned, LDAP backend and things, which would actually help us with clustering and redundancy. We could always do the standard thing where we, replicate files using DRBD or whatever. But we're trying to do a really good job with it. And the best way to start on that is to have an LDAP unified backend for all the data. And yeah, we are planning a lot of clustering and redundancy features for and scale, to help with scalability for the enterprise clients. So